All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining Russ Cairns and I today. Russ will introduce himself shortly and share some amazing insights into Ivanti Neurons soon. At any point in the webinar, feel free to post your questions as they come to you in the chat, and definitely at the end we will address them all. Just checking, everybody can hear me okay? It looks that way. Awesome.
All good, Ed.
So awesome, thank you. All right. So first, I wanted to set the scene and add context before we get straight into solution mode. I'm Edward Zazor. I am the General Manager for the ESM Center of Excellence. And just some fun facts there to share with you about the team and I. We're very passionate about hyper automation, which is what we call true ESM, which I'll get to in a second. And also, we've been working with our customers for many years, helping them find ways to transform IT from purely a cost center. As a matter of fact, find ways to turn them into a profit center. And today's webinar is actually going to go a long way to painting a picture of how you can achieve that in your own organizations. And I personally love having strategic discussions and enterprise level discussions. So always here to help. And last but not least, in the current climate, cybersecurity is very important, but I'm an advocate for making sure it actually makes sense with the end user experience. Each organization is different, and it's to find that right balance between locking things down and not impacting the user, I feel is quite important. Okay, so there we go. So first, a little bit about the three-letter acronym in the name of my department. ESM stands for Enterprise Service Management. We just thought we'd share there on the screen independent view of what it really is. And look, the concept's been around for over a decade, and it's all about getting your employees what they need to do their jobs and be empowered and productive, because anything short of that has implications, revenue leakage, inefficiencies, et cetera. And this has become much more important that we're in the age of the customer, right? The experience outside as consumers is definitely not mirrored within our own organizations. And 80% of customers or organizations still haven't adopted ESM properly. And by properly, I mean actually reaching and maintaining the end goal of ESM, which is to delight internal users, right? So if your internal users are delighted at the moment beyond just IT, well done to you, and I mean that. Today's webinar will simply help you further advance your mission statement. For all your, all other organizations that have implemented a modern ticketing system that looks good on the surface, has a great, self-service capability, and are still working hard behind the scenes, automating and hyper-automating the ever-growing demands, well, today, we'll shed some light into a bulletproof approach to help you achieve your goals. And the goal is really simple. In our consumer lives, we appreciate an app or an interface that is easy on the eye, it's easy to use. But if we get an error or a notification saying, okay, yep, thank you, we'll get you what you want in a couple of days, well, that's not right now service, is it? We actually don't care how complex things are behind the scenes. We don't care if processes are manual or hyper automated. If it takes one person or 12 people to get us what we need, we just need it, right? In our industry, the delivery and support teams that are responsible for giving users what they need right now are getting squeezed left, right, and center. I'm sure you're aware of that, and I mean really squeezed, right? So corporate PMO direction, growing demand from users, and then throw in some rules and regulations and security, right? But today, by joining this webinar, you're a part of a movement to fight back all these pressures and the odds and start transforming your department into a world-class center of excellence by getting ahead of the game and staying there. So before we get into Neurons, I just want to make a statement to set the scene. And the statement is history repeats itself. If you cast your minds back to the Y2k bug, I'm okay with you Googling it now if you don't know what it was or what it did to many companies. In a nutshell, there was a big speculation and disruption before it and well after it as well. And especially Those that didn't or couldn't prepare and realign after it properly, it touched the lives of an astronomical number of people in some very bad ways, I might add. But that was 21 years ago when people were not disconnected or always on. So like the Millennium Bug, COVID, work from home, COVID, it has been all over the news. It's front of mind for many people. And also many people choose to ignore it and its impacts or put it simply in the BAU bucket. Either way, if you're like me, I'm overhearing about it. I feel the focus now should be about how we reflect on the disruptions from Y2K and swiftly apply the lessons learned. And it's all about realigning the end-to-end capabilities to suit this new paradigm. Now, speaking of headlines, there are a few circulating at the moment, and you may think they're not related to today's webinar or what I just said, but I think you're mistaken, because if you've noticed on the national news, we are hearing now more than ever about espionage, trade secrets, and of course cybercrime and things like that. I mean, just yesterday, The Age had a story on Victorian hospitals and how many people got, disrupted from an elective surgery perspective. Acer just got hit with ransomware. So this stuff is real. I'm not going to dwell on it. I'm sure everybody on this call knows this and is aware. And the reason for all this is that the work from home model had to happen and had to work. And organizations, big and small, scrambled to get there for the survival of their organization, but for the survival of the economy, right? And we're all now in the work from home era. So kudos to everyone that helped their organizations achieve that. But the fact is now corporate assets are scattered all over the place and criminals are having a massive party with it and catching a lot of people out. So what needs to happen is a major realignment to make sure that the work from home model is sustainable and operated in a low risk manner. And that's what we've been helping customers with even during COVID last year. And we have a three-pronged approach. Protecting your assets both online and offline, right? And that's very important. And I need to expand on what I mean by IT assets to explain the breadth and depth of the problem we're faced with today. All of you, all of us are actually assets. We're human capital. We're very important people for our organization. Our identities, all the technology and tools we use are also now work from home. To paint a picture, I mean, out of a James Bond movie, I mean, if you're a well-known person, you've got trade secrets of your organization, you're on LinkedIn, you're on Facebook. If somebody wants to find out where you live and come park in front of the car and hack into your home Wi-Fi to access corporate data, they can, right? So it's real stuff, and we're actually outside the protection of our own conventional IT support teams and the corporate defenses in many, many ways, right? But to achieve true protection, and what the topic of today is about, is we actually need to make sure that those people, those employees, those key assets have better support, world-class support. We shouldn't just focus on, say, knowledge workers or specific type of employee. Every single employee or contractor does need world-class tech support behind them to protect them and support them, especially when they're always on, just like James Bond, right? But above all, and through all this, things have to be done properly and to the letter of the law. There's rules and regulations, and compliance is a black hole. And why is all this important, folks? I'm sure you know that nobody has a limitless budget for breaches or serious disruptions. So at Fusion 5, if this is the first webinar you're joining, we've been doing this for years. The journey began for me 7 years ago here at Fusion 5. Prior to that, I was in vendor land for even longer, Oracle, BMC, Micro Focus, and I'm blessed because it's given me the ability to zoom right into a vendor's world very quickly and come back out and see things from a customer perspective, and then bring both worlds together where applicable. There's a whole ecosystem and a whole story in each organization. Everybody on today's call has a story, and so does your organization. COVID happened, and now the story continues, right? So most customers know us from these two areas for many, many years now. My department's been servicing about 100 out of our 900 customers and making sure their IT ops follow processes efficiently and make sure their IT assets are actually accounted for and protected. That was before COVID, and to be honest, we could see this coming, right? So just like Y2k, about 12 months ago, we landed our final piece of the puzzle, again, in the middle of COVID, and rolled it out at several customers. It was the proof point we needed to validate what we were thinking. That's what today's webinar is about, right? The industry or vendor jargon for it is edge intelligence, right? All your laptops, tablets, phones, IoT devices, anything physical or virtual that is connected to the internet and is associated with your employees doing their jobs is now an edge device, right? These devices are getting smarter. They're getting more complicated, and in some cases have a mind of their own, as you know. But if everyone's listening to this, just pause and, for a few seconds to become fully aware and mindful that you have near you, less than a meter away, the most advanced computers ever made. They're highly complex and they're smart. And the reason I'm highlighting all this is I'm going to ask you one question. Are your IT folks, your service providers, and your entire supply chain ready to support those edge devices now and for the next 5 years, right? Some of you might say yes, and my follow-up question would be something like, hand on heart, are you providing world-class tech support to those employees and fixing their problems before they even occur? So please don't answer just yet, so we make sure we're talking about the same thing. So back to James Bond, think about his relationship with Q. Now that's world-class support, and that's actually what we're talking about here. What Russ is about to show you can be set up in a handful of days, regardless of what ticketing system you use, regardless of the mobility and security tools you have had or will invest in over the next 2 years. And at this point, I just want to bring your attention to the graphic on the screen, the connectors. For this whole concept to work, it absolutely must connect to your strategy around your mobility and security, but more importantly, to the process governance framework you have behind the scenes, your ITIL, your CYAN, your CMDB, and things like that. And Ivanti have absolutely got it right, because they have a lot of connectors. I've seen the roadmap, and they're here to make sure that our customers can achieve world-class tech support. And one last point before I hand over to Ross. Ross will actually just zoom into one tiny piece of Neurons, a sliver of functionality called remediation and healing. He'll show you some other things. But the reason this is all the tools that you have from a security perspective and things like that allow you to slice and dice the data. It will raise events if something happens, but not all of them can actually take action and fix the problem, right? And that's why we're zooming into remediation and healing. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Russ Cairns. Russ, would you like to introduce yourself as I make you presenter?
Yeah, thanks, Ed. Good morning, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. I assume, Ed, you'll tell me if you can't. So my name's, thanks, Ed. My name's Russ Cairns. So I'm a ESM and UEM specialist with Avanti. So helping customers, get the best use of a lot of our product suites, but focusing on that ESM and UEM space. And like Ed said, we see a lot of different challenges from our, or I talk to a lot of different customers and see a lot of different challenges that customers speak of and talk to. And things like, Ed highlighted, are we seeing any, are we seeing all potential incidents? Can we be more proactive in doing things? Could we resolve incidents before they're reported? And are customers doing their own kind of support and help? Are they doing what's it called, shadow IT, I suppose, in the sense of shadow support IT? And how can we potentially provide our customers with better experiences, or even from a security perspective and security lens, are there vulnerabilities, or are we leaving ourselves open? With people working from home or working from everywhere, the everywhere workplace, there's bigger risks if you're using free Wi-Fi or those kind of non-home Wi-Fi, non-corporate Wi-Fi, because those free Wi-Fis are easy to spoof, if you like, so people can then get and hack your systems and get your personal data into corporate data. So really what I'm going to show you and sort of talk a bit more about today, as Ed said, is the neurons for healing. And Ed, I'm just confirming that my screen is shared.
Yeah, I can see the Neurons console. Thank you.
Perfect, perfect. So, neurons, as Ed said, this is really just one component of the overall Neurons platform, but the Neurons for healing and Neurons workspace capabilities are really here to try and elevate that level of support that we give to our end users. Provide things like real-time detection, targeted actions, automated resolutions, some immediate notifications out to the end users, back into IT, so that they can be a little bit more proactive. So there's a lot of different capabilities. I'm just going to show a couple of quick use cases though, just to kind of give you a flavor of what is possible. This is one of those things where it's almost just limited by your imagination to a degree, because if certainly in the conversations I've had with customers, a good approach is to look at the incident tickets that you're getting raised from your customer base, seeing what they are, seeing what the resolution is, and having a think, well, okay, what could I do? What could I use Neurons to use Neurons for to potentially make this issue go away? Whether that be through some kind of proactive response to a state change of some sort, or a daily, weekly check of disk usage, and automatically clearing out temporary files and internet cache and those kind of things. So we've got a live system here, the Fusion 5 system, and I've got a virtual machine here, which also hopefully you can see, because I shared my screen, I think, not the app. So this is the orange there. Beautiful. So, there's just little things like we talk about, sort of notification out to customers. So, maybe I want to do a help desk notification. Perhaps there's a 0-day patch that's gone out, and you've rolled that out with your patch vulnerability system, patch management system, and you just want to send out a notification to either one machine or your user base saying, hey, can you make sure you reboot at the end of the day? So you get a little notification pop up in the bottom right hand corner. It's a Windows 10 notification. Say, hi, we need you to reboot your machine by the end of the day, please, so we can ensure that patch takes and that patch vulnerability is solved or remediated. So you can do very, very simple things like that. There might be some other things where you've got services that you need to restart, and one of the other benefits of doing this kind of thing for the service desk team or the support team is that perhaps you can receive a phone call from the customer, and they can say, I'm having issues with my printer, and you can take action on and do something like try and start or restart the print spooler service really quickly, without having to remote control, without having to talk the customer through it. Certainly, I haven't been on the help desk for a lot of years, but I can remember trying to talk customers through things like, start run services, or start run command to get your IP details and those kind of things. And that just takes time, right? Whereas if you could just attempt some of these things remotely and quickly, you're not taking up as much time for the customer. It's a quicker experience, and the customer can go ahead and get back to their day job, and you can move on to the next customer. So you're really reducing that lag time. So things like this, print spooler. I want to start the print spooler. I come back here. You can see it's currently not running. If I just do a refresh, then you can see that's now running. And again, and we get a little notification down the bottom there to say print spooler has started. So again, there's some really simple use cases that might not seem like much, but could certainly, I think, benefit the experience that the customer has and the time that it takes to solve some of these things. And all of these custom actions you see here are things that you take in this context of an individual machine. We can do a reboot notification. We can run some desktop performance analysis and take some remediation actions as well. And more what this will do, mostly behind the scenes, is clear temporary files, clear internet files, and sort of send some notifications back to the end user and say, hi, we're doing some performance changes for you. In this case, you can see we're clearing the temporary files to increase performance. So not only are you taking action, but you're keeping the customer engaged and customer aware of what's happening on their machine. So they're not just going, oh my God, what's happening? I don't know what's going on here.
And if I just add something there, Ross, I mean, back to that consumer experience, when I'm on my Telstra app on my phone and it interacts with me and things like that, I actually appreciate it, and again, drawing the parallel there is we want to make that whole IT experience just more in line with people outside work, right? And those examples you just shared, the bots can do them automatically, of course, but today we're doing them manually so people can follow the demonstration, and that's quite an important point.
Yeah, for sure. So these custom actions, as I say, we're doing this in the context of a single machine here, which is a VM that I'm running. But you can do these on a schedule, which we'll have a look at in a minute. I think just to have a look at some of the guts of this. Because even things like firewall, enabling the firewall, there's checking disk encryption and potentially ensuring that that's turned on, a bit like a recovery. So there's a good couple of examples there on things that can be done. And yeah, but again, that's just all in context. So these are the kind of things that you would do if a customer calls up. But of course, and that's really helpful for just that situation where you're dealing with a customer, but where you want to be a bit more proactive to prevent the need for the customers to actually call up, then these type of actions we have here then are just scheduled. So, if we have a look, for example, this is the Neurons workspace where you actually go and configure and create these workspaces or create these bots. We do call them bots, so you can see a little bot icon that we've got in the navigation bar on the left hand side. But things like the desktop performance, there's quite a number of steps that are built into this that that are doing multiple things to help try and assess, analyze, and remediate performance of the desktop. So we're establishing whether we've got Windows 10 or Windows 7, because that can obviously there's different things that need to happen there. What type of results we're looking for to ensure that we're looking for maybe online machines or a machine, a certain version of Windows. Looking at free disk based, is that potentially a cause of an issue? And off the back of that, we're taking a PowerShell action, and then we're displaying that notification, which we actually saw come up when I showed the VM earlier. We're then doing battery health checks. This is an interesting one, actually, that came up with a customer in the UK last year now, or very early last year even, where they actually had a batch of laptops that they received that ended up having bad batteries. And so they were able to sort of go out and find these and track and monitor the health of the battery, so that before the warranty expired on those devices, they could log a support call with the vendor, and the vendor would replace those batteries for free. But you can just keep a track of this over time. So maybe a battery health check, something you run on your environment once a week, and so that you can get awareness of batteries that are terrible or poor, and then again go back to your hardware vendor and say we need to replace the batteries of these devices before the warranty of those devices end. And that in itself can save the organization a ton of money over the life of those laptops and devices, and provide a better experience to the end users because their laptops remain fit for purpose. We are moving around a lot more. We're moving between traditional office environments. We move between offices and meeting rooms. Perhaps even at home, you're sort of needing to spend a bit of time at your desk. Maybe you go to the laptop, to the couch to do some stuff. On days not like today, you might even go outside. And I'm sure there's people down the east coast of Australia are all experiencing the same rain that I can see out my window today. And so there's lots of different things we can do here, and then you can then result in things like creating a service management ticket to do further investigation and further remediation if that's necessary to actually get somebody involved as well. So there's a lot of different use cases you can create and you build these workflows. So I'm dealing with some customers at the moment that have critical systems that are not serviced, they're not being monitored by normal monitoring tools. We can use this though to monitor situations. If I just go and have a look at creating something here, looking at processes or services that are running on a machine. So just a simple one is a process, and this might be just the finance app, for example. Just checking if the finance app exists on a machine. If it doesn't, then taking some kind of remediation action, and that can be anything from asking the user to reboot to perhaps launching some kind of executable off the machine. You might want to combine that with checking whether a particular website is available. If it is an application that it relies on a website or a particular server, for example, you can do website checks or network checks as well. So various different things like that. And then off the back of that, again, you've got actions. So we've got actions for clearing the browser data, those messages and notifications. Maybe it requires software installation, so we can go and ask or get some software installed. That starts service, so we could potentially say, well, we think if a certain process is missing, we want to check a website whether we can check so we can communicate, and then maybe start a particular service on that machine. So this is actually the start service block here is what we use for that spooler service to start that spooler. So
And I'm just gonna jump in here, Russ, because a couple of weeks back I was working with a customer that's heavy on KCS, right? Like knowledge-centric support, and they've invested a lot of energy in self-help and articles, both for junior analysts when they're manning the desk. And what I'm seeing here is actually, I think I referenced it in my wrap-up slides, but you can take your knowledge, your self-help concept even further and start converting those articles, which look very much like this, check that, step 2, step 3, and create a bot, right? And that will save
Definitely.
from an ROI, so just some food for thought there, because as you said, the implications or the applications of something like this are actually not just, you can't put them into a single box, right? So I just thought I'd share that.
Yeah, and I think that that kind of leads me to it's a really exciting feature that's coming to Neurons very soon, is integration with Teams and taking that kind of concept one step further and allowing an end user to start a conversation with a bot in Teams to say, maybe I'm having performance issues, and then presenting that user some options about what they could do. So maybe from Teams, they could say, okay, run the action to clear the temporary internet files or to clear the temporary files on my machine, and having that integration between Teams and Neurons so that the user can trigger off those kind of things. If they're having a problem with printers, in an ideal world, I feel the end users won't necessarily have the admin access to restart services on their machine, nor perhaps probably don't have the knowledge of how to do that and when to do that. So it could be something in Teams where they say, well, I'm having issues with the printer, which, again, that reference back to your KCS example. If a user's looking at knowledge base, that might be something, and there might be some steps. But in this case, you'd say, well, I'm going to restart the service for you. Or I'm going to take an action for you, Mr. Customer. Behind the scenes, it restarts the service, goes back to the customer, says, can you please try and print again? And voila, the printing now works. So that to me is a really exciting integration coming up, Ed, that I think will further enhance that ability for end users, particularly.
3 words there. World-class support. So it's awesome, man.
Indeed. So
awesome. Was there anything else you wanted to share?
Look, not particularly. We've got a few minutes, I guess, but there's a lot of different actions that we have within Neurons in the marketplace. There's always more things coming on. Adding particular firewall rules. So if you have a corporate change and you need to allow a new firewall rule in Windows Firewall, you could perhaps set up a rule here. That is also something actually I've heard of a use case that a university in the UK used this to enable a certain finance app. I think on their environment they have to set up some particular firewall rules. But there are a lot of stages here that we have out of the box that people can leverage and use. And then outside of that, if you need to, you can create your own custom stages with PowerShell actions and queries, as well as Bash actions and queries for macOS devices. So this is not just Windows. Obviously, it's both Windows and Mac. We've got support to do various things. But as I say, it's the world is kind of your oyster. You can be as creative as you like in thinking and assessing how you can help your end users and really how you can make your life easier, because you're not doing this repetitive stuff. I think I'd certainly have more fun if I was looking at creating some of these things to help me focus on other things in the future, rather than just constantly taking phone calls and doing the same things to support the end users.
Spot on. Awesome. All right, I'll just take back the controls. Thank you, Ross. That was fantastic, man. And also, I wanted to thank you in front of everyone, for your help over the past 12 months with your tips and tricks and helping us set up our own Fusion 5 Neurons environment, mate. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem at all.
Awesome. So I think everybody can see. So let's wrap up here. Yeah, we're back to the slides. So yeah, what's next? I mean, the team and I, obvious question now is, okay, business case to get this stuff done, and I just, from my experience, I wanted to give you some help, right? Because here's 8 points that from a business perspective will absolutely justify the cost or however you want to look at it. FCR, right? I think it was last year when I ran a webinar, I crunched some numbers, and only 50 out of the survey, and it was thousands of people in service desk realm, only 15% of organizations that were surveyed consistently achieve 80% plus. Right? Now, you all know your own internal reporting KPIs and things like that, but I put it there because it's got a cascading effect on many of the other traditional KPIs around running a service desk or a support network, right? And with something like Neurons, I hope you can see how if you can resolve issues before they're even raised or resolve them on that very first call, that KPI from an ROI perspective will just make it worth your while. In business language, what we're really talking about is not a new concept. I mean, proactive problem management, at the end of the day, it does reduce call volumes. And, this is what's new about this is in the context of edge computing, right? So we're now talking about desktops, mobile phones, and things like that. This concept obviously existed, from an outage management or reliability, business continuity on servers and enterprise applications and things like that. You've got CM and SOAR tools in there to pick up an alert when something looks like it's going to go wrong. now that this is coming right to the front line, to the edge. And yeah, picture this, folks. I mean, imagine, for 6 months in a row, month on month on month, your customer stats are just, higher than they ever were, right? So I think that that's worth a mention in your business case. These 2 points go hand in hand, right? When I call Apple or Telstra or whoever, it really gets on my nerves if I have to actually give them technical information about my device or the service that I have. Even with banks, like, why do I have to tell you what account type I have and things like that? You should know. You should know, because my time's valuable. And if you're providing world-class support, you have a 360-degree view of me and the services and products I have from you. Which brings me to the next point, and I also feel strongly about remote control. It's so 80s, right? It goes to the previous point. Now, the reason remote control came into existence is exactly that: your end users not being able to articulate properly what the technical issue is. So it makes it easier for analysts to actually see what they're seeing. So with Neurons, we're not eliminating remote control. As a matter of fact, it's bleeding edge how they've done the remote control. It uses video streaming and things like that. It's there if you need it, but one of your KPIs should be to start, finding ways of relying less on remote control, because then you've got the time impact and the SLA impact. That you have to schedule into the user's calendar a time for you to be allowed to do remote control and things like that. It's just not the most efficient, effective way, and your customers no happier either, right? And the part that Ross alluded to, interacting with the device without disruption. We didn't really show you real-time intelligence today. It's the ability for an analyst to interact with the sensor on that device directly. You can natural language text, run queries, show me .NET frameworks, show me installed browsers, show me the last time, this device had a blue screen at death. And we're doing all this troubleshooting and root cause analysis before we disrupt the user or reach out to them. And of course, this is huge. I mean, everything has to be traceable and connected to your ticketing system or your CMDB or whatever framework you use. And that's quite important. And it's definitely one of the ticks from a business case or an objection that may come up is saying, oh, are we getting yet another tool? How does it connect to everything, right? It's very important. And last but not least, I mean, spin this however you want in the business case, but the way I look at it, back to the James Bond analogy, I mean, if you're not aware or you don't live and breathe cybersecurity, I don't know if you know, but there's ransomware as a service now, right? So the evil guys, the criminals, are enlisting and creating evil bots that are, making it more efficient for them to exploit issues. So, skills aside, it has nothing to do with the skills in your support team. It's just volume and sheer demand. So this will give you the ability to, create armies of bots of your own to combat that massive increase in volume. And just a cherry on top, some practical examples. So I spoke about the business case. What you see there is, again, Ross sort of alluded to this, but the takeaway point here is the Neurons library is growing steadily and will reach 100 bots and actions very soon, right? So I just want to leave you with 5 quick wins or low-hanging fruit that you can implement straight away with Neurons, and you'll get positive ROI straight away. There's the point that I sort of jumped in Ross's demo and mentioned the knowledge base, so all those articles that you have that your analysts have to go and read to troubleshoot, just look at the time factor there and the cost to you in running the service desk and see if you can convert those into Neurons, especially if you run a report in your current ticketing system, what are your top 10 most repeatable, mundane things your customers reach out to you for? This one's a very specific use case, and if you're not involved with legacy apps and plugins to Outlook and things like that, just think patches or think software distribution. And it's twofold. How many hours does it take for you to actually plan that, and how many tickets come up after it, right? So a perfect example there was that workflow that Ross showed you. Before we run a bot on an end machine, we can check, is it a 32-bit, is it 64-bit, and take appropriate actions accordingly. And you can go and survey your entire fleet in a matter of seconds. That will help you prepare to which machines you're going to target, right? And it's also going to reduce the volume of tickets that come aftermath, right? And of course, I've grouped these three all together: performance, networking, login issues. Very easy to troubleshoot. Just combine them all into one metric and see how many tickets you get a week. And if you can just cut those by half, you're way ahead. Remote control, I think I've made my point. If anything, the only additional point I want to make here, across your organization, I know customers that have 3 or 4 different remote control tools. I mean, some of them are freeware, some of them are paid. Well, yeah, there's some cost savings there. And the last one is very close to me, and I just don't think that world-class tech support can tolerate this anymore. I'm fine with reaching out to IT if I have an ad hoc question or I have a request. What I'm not fine with is reaching out to IT for something that's supposed to be working every day, right? And my follow-up question there is, if it keeps crashing, Outlook, Teams, things I use every day, surely I should know why it's happening and probably try and fix it, so I don't have to pick up the phone and let them know it's broken again, right? So, folks, I hope this was an informative session for you. We have 2 more lined up for you this side of the financial year to help you budget better for FY21 and /22. So when you get an email from our fantastic marketing team or a personal invite from me and the team, simply register. So in no particular order, we're looking at two big topics. In enterprise mobility and security, the market's full of these tools. I mean, where Microsoft and the platform's amazing, but what it comes down to, and what my customers are telling me, is when they look at the features, tick, tick, it does this, it does that, they're left with the burden of trying to retrofit that into the use cases of their employees and workers. So we're going to take a fresh approach. I'm going to also have a guest speaker. We're actually going to do it by use case. If you're a knowledge worker, this is the day in the life of. If you're work in a warehouse, if you're a driver, if you're a policeman, if you're a operator, customer service, and so on, we're going to break it down by use case and show you some pros and cons and things to consider. The other equally important webinar is, have you been on the same ticketing system for the last 3 to 5 years? And if you have, or you've been tasked with going to tender to see what's out there, again, pre-COVID, post-COVID, business requirements change. And if you haven't heard about SIAM, thank me later. It stands for Service Integration and Management, and it's just a really fresh way of looking at ITSM and enterprise service management. So Ross and I will now go to questions. While we do that, I suggest you go to our website. It's the easiest way to get in touch with us, just fusion5.com.au. 2 clicks from there, solutions, enterprise service management, and you can start a chat and it will get routed straight to my team. Once again, thank you for joining us.
Hey, Ed, so I've got a couple of questions here, if I can fire them off to you now, mate. So the first one here, I assume Neurons is licensed by asset. We have over 10,000 assets. Do we pay for all of them?
Wow, straight into licensing. Look, I'll make a comment and then Ross can add some color to it. Look, because Neurons has a discovery capability and all those connectors, and we do encourage you to connect to all of them and suck that data into the edge platform, so both your human and non-human analysts can crunch the data, and also it reconciles it. It doesn't, you don't pay for things like routers and switches and discovered assets. It's really the assets that you want to manage with Neurons, or the ones that have an OS on them. Russ, can you just clarify if I'm correct?
Yeah, no, you're on the money. The general thing I say is, if it can have an agent running on it, so Windows, Mac, that's what we need to license.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah, everything else is kind of just included.
Nice. Was that the only question, Gareth?
No, I've got a couple more here. So does Neurons tell me what software is installed on the devices?
Absolutely. Ross, you want to?
Yeah, absolutely.
Add some color?
One of the fundamental pieces of Neurons. It does an inventory of the machines that are running the agent, and even if you've got some scenarios where we need to do agentless scanning of Windows devices, we can also get all the installed software. And one of the other elements of Neurons is a piece called Spend Intelligence, which then, because we've got all this information in the cloud, we want to try and give you some insights into that. So Spend Intelligence will provide insights into what's licensable, what's coming up end of life, maybe what is not being used. So it sort of starts to build a bit of a picture of software asset management, and it highlights areas of risk potentially in your environment.
Absolutely.
Might combine these two.
Let's take 3 more. We have time.
Yeah, no stress. I'll combine these two. So how many connectors are there, and does Neurons have a connector for mobile iron?
How many connectors does it have?
Yeah,
Lots.
last count I got up to about 24 odd, and yes, it absolutely has a connector for mobile iron.
Cool. And final question, is this only for Windows devices? I feel like it might not be, Ed.
You got it. It definitely, the whole plan here, edge devices, right, guys? Back to the point, they're not all Microsoft, and I know for a fact that we can do Linux as well. Russ, do you want to clarify or expand on that?
Yeah, look, it's definitely Windows and Mac. Linux is something that is coming, is on the roadmap. I don't think we're quite there yet with the agent. And then, yeah, we can view and discover and identify anything really that, as you say, any IoT-based devices. And we've got some particular
I think that's where
capabilities around health as well.
Yeah, and just to add another part to that, the whole Linux agent thing really, it really depends on where IoT goes, right? So from my experience, there's a blend of IoT technologies out there, and I think that whole space is still normalizing. But one thing's for sure, I mean, if there's a use case for it, Fusion 5 and Avanti work very closely together. So if you've got an odd use case, definitely reach out to us.
That's it for the questions.
Any more questions? Awesome. Well, once again, thank you all. I hope you found it valuable. And yeah, until next time, take care. And we're always here to help. Thanks again, Ross. Thanks, Gareth. And thanks to all the attendees. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks, everyone.